What if I told you that the secret to employee retention isn't about paychecks or perks? It's about making people feel like they matter. This is Talent Talks, where we dive deep into the real conversations about culture, leadership, and what it takes to build teams that actually want to stay. Emily recently talked with Brian Biro, known as America's breakthrough speaker. With over 2 presentations delivered worldwide and 35 years of experience, Brian has helped transform organizations from the inside out. But what makes this conversation special is that Brian learned his most important leadership lessons from legendary coach John Wooden, and he's got the stories to prove it. We're diving into Brian's magical approach to creating curiosity weight until you hear about the Yoga Gnomes Trail he built for his grandchildren. We'll explore his corporate turnaround story where he went from bitter departmental silos to breakthrough synergy with one simple conversation. And he's sharing his ESPN framework for recognition that can transform your workplace culture starting today. Brian believes we're all leaders, that leadership is more about asking the right questions than having all the answers, and that 5 minutes of being truly present with someone is worth 5 years of faking it. If you're ready to learn how to move from ego to we go and discover why the love we fail to share is the only pain we live with, this conversation will change how you think about leadership. Let's dive in.
Okay, well, welcome back to another episode of Talent Talks. I'm your host, Emily Alvarez, and I am joined today by an awesome guest, Brian Biro. He is coming to us actually from his hotel room, but we are super excited to talk to Brian. He is America's breakthrough speaker, delivered over 2,000 presentations all over the world for the last 35 years. Over 1 million participants. That is amazing. And you're the author of 16 books, 16 books. The most recent one, Lessons from the Legends, but Beyond Success was really kind of the one that launched a lot for you, right? And
Right.
then you went to Stanford, UCLA, Good Morning America, CNN, just to note some of the places that you have appeared. National Speakers Association influence events, major prestigious awards, only to like 750 of the world's best keynote speakers, right? And then most recently, certified professional expert, only 34 in the world. I mean, you are top notch, Brian. Thank you so much for being here with us today. This is an honor, truly.
Well, I feel that the honor is mine. I loved our pre-conversation before this, and you do an extraordinary job of asking questions that really cause people who've been around a long time to really think and go deeper. So I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. And, we try to do that on this podcast, not staying in kind of the corporate cliches, and really scratching the surface is not enough, right? It's not enough these days, especially with what's going on economically, what's going on with corporate culture. And we're going to dive into that today when we talk about retention, because you spend a lot of time talking to corporate leadership and C-suite and also across the spectrum of management, about retention and about what it means to engage employees and engage people and keep them engaged, right? That rhythm and that motion of what that looks like. And my background coming from the ATS world and HR tech really kind of fuses there. But what I believe is that it really comes down to being seen, heard, and human. And that takes a certain level of, I believe, curiosity about people. And you have a great story about spending time with your grandkids, right? About your pathway that you've built with your garden gnomes. And I love that story. So tell us that story, because I think that's a great opening to this.
Well, I love getting to talk about my grandchildren.
Yeah,
The classic cliche is that you love having grandkids because you can spoil them and leave them, and leave them.
right.
A little bit of truth to that, but the real truth is when you have grandchildren, it reawakens your desire to create magic for them, and you are much more present with them, because when you have your own kids and you're younger, you're trying to figure out life.
Right.
And so half the time you're with them, you're not really with them. Your mind's thinking about what are we going to do for dinner? Where we got to be tomorrow? What am I going to do at that meeting? But when you're a grandparent, you kind of realize, man, that stuff is going to take care of itself. My time with you is magic. So we have in our home, we live near Charlottesville, Virginia. We have a 5 acres and a kind of a little mountain behind us. And so
Right.
my wife and I came up with this idea that I would cut a trail that went up to the very top of this little mountain on our property and then come back down. It's about 2/3 of a mile. And we decided to create a magical pathway, and a child wide-eyed kind of scavenger hunt. So we bought
Yeah.
these little tiny garden gnomes, and you nailed them. They were called yoga gnomes. One's doing
I
a back
love it.
bend and all
Yeah.
that stuff. And we put them all along this trail. And then we put crystals and we put little gifts, and we put actually on some of the trees we put eyes and nose and mouth, and one had a door that you could look like you'd walk into the tree house inside, and then we took them for a walk, and it was the most incredible experience for all of us.
Hmm.
They were convinced that this was truly a magical place. If so much so that kind of put the pressure on, because after that first time through the walk, I had to change everything all the time so the magic kept
Right.
moving. But their wide eyes, they're thinking about, how did those gnomes know what I wanted? Wow, all this incredible magic that a young person sees. It opened our eyes to the magic of curiosity, the magic that we can create with each other when we kind of step out of the norm and we do something that's a little bit more creative and more fun. And so now that's the big thing. Our kids, when our grandchildren are coming to see us, can we go? Can we go on the trail? Can we go on the trail? So
Right.
it was magical for all of us.
I love that story. I love that so much. My dad spent a lot of time doing scavenger hunts with me as a kid. Like anytime we went on vacation, we would do scavenger hunts. That's what we would do. And that would be how we would get out and like experience the culture of wherever we were. And so I love what you said about now you have to go out and change stuff around. Now you have to go out there and rearrange stuff and almost like keep their curiosity and their wonder going. That to me is so paramount to leadership, right? We have the responsibility with our employees when it comes to talking about retention and culture. Um, we have to keep people engaged.
Oh
And
yes,
as leaders, I think creating that curiosity and that wonder is not something we just do once and then say, there it is. It's something that we have to kind of keep being creative and agile. That agility is what keeps people coming back and buying in over and over again. And that curiosity, just like your grandkids, they're going to keep coming back to that trail, whether it's as kids or as a core memory for the rest of their lives. And they're probably going to continue that tradition the rest of their lives in some way, shape, or form, I guarantee you. Or if you think about it as leadership, if we set that example in leadership, people that experience that level of leadership take that and deliver that to other people. So it becomes almost like a pay it forward moment. And so
absolutely.
I love that. And I think that goes into our next kind of segue about corporate teams being one company, right? And really bringing people together. So we talk about retention and we talk about team building or bringing people together in a corporate space. Um, I think a lot of times we find this to be difficult, and it can be for a number of reasons like siloing. Maybe the company doesn't have the best, let's call it a storyline, which to me is like their foundation, their values, right? Um, I know you went through this turning a company around that was in a situation where they were siloed and you were initiated as the VP, right? And how this is a really great story about how you kind of pulled this apart because you didn't just do it by coming in and like ripping it apart, right? And I think this story is really important for leaders to hear because when we get to understanding our values, sometimes we have to break stuff apart. We have to kind of like tear things open and say, like, we have to scrape this and really maybe cut the fat and start over, right?
Well, you bring up a whole bunch of things that are just flourishing in my mind that I want to bring up. First of all, when you talked about how we have to be agile, um, what that really means is so many people talk about change management. Change
Hmm.
management to me is looking from behind. What we need to be talking about and need to be embracing is change leadership,
Hmm.
because the world is changing so fast. I mean,
Right,
3 or 4 years ago, we were talking about COVID. What we're talking about now is AI, and it's going to be, and what AI is going to be a year from now. Everything is moving very rapidly. If you're
right,
trying to manage change, it's like you're trying to hold on to a bucking bronco from behind. Instead, you got to be the horse whisperer and get out in front of it and really lead that change. That's number one. Number two, if you're really going to be a leader in today's corporate world or in any endeavor in your community, the starting place is to have respect for everyone on your team and recognize that everyone is a leader.
hmm,
I talk a lot about, I'm called America's breakthrough speaker, and I talk
right,
about breakthrough leadership. But
right.
but that is for everyone. You are the CEO of your own life. You are
Yes,
absolutely, how you show up every day is a form of leadership. How you deal with adversity, with change, leadership. What kind of impact do you have on the people? So we're all leaders. And the other key thing is that every single business, everyone who's watching this podcast, I don't care what industry you're in, I don't care what position you're in, every single organization is in the midst of a team sport. You're a team sport.
yeah,
And so getting to that story that you it's brought up, I've had 3 careers. So my first career, I was a US swimming coach. And
right,
interestingly enough, people say that swimming is an individual sport. And there's a little bit of truth to that, because you get up on the blocks and you're in your own race. But
right.
I believe with all my heart that it is absolutely positively a team sport,
I
because
do too.
I
Yeah,
saw it every day in practice. Because when we came together, it was as if we had a magnificent kind of current pushing us
yeah,
faster. And every time we separated and were focusing only on ourselves, it was as if we had to turn and swim into that current, making us go slower. So that was
right.
the kind of the background to where I kind of questioned when I went into my corporate career after I coached for 8 years, had a wonderful career, went in my corporate career, and I saw we were separated, we were siloed, we were swimming into the current.
Right,
Operations didn't like sales. Sales didn't like operations. They both didn't like the home office a little bit more. And that
right.
made no sense to me, first of all, because salespeople go into sales because they don't want to do operations or administration. Operations people don't go
Exactly.
into sales because they don't want to do that. They want to do operations. So they each were in the areas where they could flourish if they would work together. So in our organization, we were in big trouble. Our big market, we were a company that was huge in building Alaska during the days of the big pipeline building, and
Right,
and Alaska's industry just closed up. And everybody said it's the market. We're about, we could go out of business, having been in business a long time, a very formally successful company. I say it's not the market, it's us. There's lots of markets, but we don't see them because we're so busy fighting each other. So I
right,
I convinced, I was vice president, and I convinced the president to let me go out and try to do team building events, and I loved it. And we had this incredible turnaround. And that turnaround came from listening to each other and respecting each other's strengths and really embracing the fact that I'm going to do better in sales because I can trust you. You're going to do a great job in serving the customer. We had the
right,
most magnificent turnaround when we moved from silos to synergy. And it started, interesting enough, one on one with I was the vice president in charge of sales and marketing, vice president who was in
right,
charge of operations, next door to me. We never spoke unless we had to be in a meeting, and we'd sit on opposite sides. One day I walked into his office with no agenda, not to argue my point of view, just to ask more than tell, really. And
right,
then I had never spent more than 5 minutes with the man, except when in a meeting where I had to be there. An hour later, after I walked into his office, right around the corner, there's a little wall between us. I
right,
spent an hour, and I found out what is at the essential heart of bringing teams together. He cared about the people and the company every bit as much as I did. We just
Sure.
looked at things from a different viewpoint. As
Right.
soon as I realized that, as soon as we both realized that, we no longer looked at our different viewpoints as differences, as obstacles. We saw them as resources. That,
Right.
that he could see things that I wouldn't see, and I would see things that he didn't see. And from that point on, we had a magnificent turnaround. So when you get that turnaround going, and it's another reason why it helps retention, is that when you get down to it, people love to be in a synergistic operation. When people
Sure.
feel like everybody's looking to appreciate one another, it is a magnificent difference in the corporate world that is much more powerful than even a raise in the paycheck. A raise in the paycheck is nice, but when you want to come to work, that's when you're engaged.
Right.
So that was an eye opener. In fact, it really brought me to what I do in life now, because at the peak of this turnaround, having done these these trainings that I did all over North America, I said to my wife, "We're doing great. Let's quit.
Right.
I got to go do this." And that's what I've been doing for 35 years.
Yeah, and that's where it becomes really a calling, right? More than anything else, because it takes a certain kind of person to come into an organization with vision to be able to say strategic things versus tactical things, right? And if you can do both, even better, because some people can only do one or the other. But what I believe about siloing and the deterioration of that separation within organizations is what tends to happen is um, people can see the interconnectivity of what's going on, and then it becomes like a community, right?
It does. It
And
does.
then what happens is, and this goes kind of into the next stuff that we're going to talk about like who we hire and why, but I believe that when people know what the process is and how it fits together, a few different things happen. First of all, they're faster to buy into it because they can see, like from beginning to end, they have the vision, right? It also brings them together in a sense of community because they're like, okay, I can talk to, like you went next door and talked to, the person in operations, they're able to collaborate. And there's a sense of, okay, we can develop relationships and get to know people in a different context than what we ever have before. And the third thing is, I believe that our employees are our first customers
Oh
at the
yeah.
end of the day. And so when employees have their hands on a product, again, doesn't matter what industry it is, because at the end of the day, you're either selling a service or a product, or, you're shipping something, right? People take more pride and purpose in things that they understand that they've had a significant impact on.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. And,
and
and
so
And I think you bring up something I really want to jump on, because I think it's so important. How do you build that community? How do you build that community when you do have different perspectives? And there's something I call blame busting. The single
oh
most
yes.
destructive word in the language of teams, families, organizations, communities is 5 letters. It's BLAME, blame.
Yeah. You call it that.
Blame.
I call it the Cheshire Cat syndrome,
Yeah,
where it's like,
that's right. That's right.
yeah,
Now, blame serves no real purpose. Now, there's a difference between accountability and responsibility and blame.
yes,
And here's the simple and just very practical reason why blame doesn't work. Think about blame in the context of time. Is blame about the past, the present, or the future? It's always about the past.
yeah,
Can you change the past? No. All right. So whenever you're in blame, guess where you are? You're in the past, where you're never going
right,
to find a solution in the past. So when I say blame busting, it doesn't mean we pretend everything's rosy and everything's perfect and nobody makes mistakes. No,
right,
we hold ourselves and our people around us accountable. But in this way, we say, here's what we did. I think, the mistake we made. What are we going to do, and what are we going to learn from it right now? So
right,
blame busters are really time travelers. They take us from the past, where there's only anger, frustration, disappointment, into the present, where we learn that builds towards a future where we can use that, what we've done, to make ourselves better. So blame busting is vital, because
Yeah.
you can't build a community when people feel like that old, that old fair game called whack-a-mole. All right.
Yeah.
When there's
Mhm.
blame, people are afraid to stick their heads out, to bring up an idea, to
Right.
bring up a new way of doing things, to voice what they think needs to change. And if you want to have a community, as you said, you got to have that feeling that you matter and that you're important in that organization. You'll
Right.
never feel important if you're worried about being blamed all the time. Instead, you'll just put your head down, keep yourself from coming up where the mallet hits you over the head, and therefore you go nowhere. And what's the real danger of that is that you're going to fall further and further behind, and you're going to absolutely have people who say it's just a job. And once they say it's just a job, the door is going to be wide open. They're going to head right out that door, and you can
Yeah.
lose great people because of the fear, instead of the possibility.
Well, and I would even say even even worse than losing good people is you have people in your organization that work for you that are miserable, and their health and other things start to decline. Work-life balance goes out the window. Their families aren't happy at home. They're not happy. And then it starts to impact like there's collateral damage,
Yeah,
right? And I
absolutely.
think that's actually worse than
Yeah,
that employee taking a hike, right? Because the amount of lives that working in a crappy organization and having a terrible experience there affects is far greater than someone just saying like, you know what, I've had enough and like I'm done. Because at least that person took their power back, right?
yes, 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 yes.
And this person is like, well, I'm like stuck here because like if I don't have a job, like then I can't support my, family, or I can't, do what pay my bills, and then and some people don't adapt well to change. I mean, there's a whole lot of psychological and physical and stuff that can happen. And again, I think this is why with retention, it really matters who we hire and why. And it goes back to, I believe that we don't hire correctly in the first place. And that's not the people we hire's fault, by the way. That's the organization's fault, because we have a systemic problem of value misalignment and value consistency misalignment, right? So a company can have values that they put up on a wall, or that they put on their website, or that they, once a quarter they have a company meeting and they talk about integrity and honesty and craftsmanship and whatever their values are. But if you don't see that reflected in the initiatives and in the people's actions every day, and in the, like you said, the team building, like if there's not something to support that, to give people additional purpose to keep them engaged, um, I mean, not only can it affect people's health and their ability to want to stay with your company, but you get all sorts of bad stuff, poisoning the barrel. There's a lot of things that happen. Your product suffers, your customers hate you, you know, uh, your employees leave and then they badmouth you on Glassdoor and all those other things. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that happens, right? And so I think the values and understanding why we hire and who we hire and why is a big deal. What are your thoughts on, I mean, what I think that speaks volumes about retention. It's kind of
Yeah,
that's kind of the first problem.
yeah. What is the number one reason why people leave organizations and want to give up? It's because they don't get along with usually their boss or their manager, with somebody that they
Right.
don't get along with. So right away we know. And here's the other thing. I've spoken to so many organizations, 2,000 different events, and I always interview them in advance of my speaking to find out what are your desired outcomes. Tell me about your
Right.
people. What's their mindset? What's the challenges you face? And probably the most universal challenge. And see, the leader, the CEO, the COO, whoever's hiring me knows this, is that many of their people don't feel appreciated.
Right.
All right. And if you want people to be engaged, they have to feel that they are appreciated, that they, in other words, that what they do is important and who they are is important.
Right.
They also, the other aspect is people doing things that they feel good about. They feel prepared. When we feel that we know what we're going to do and we feel we have the tools to do it, we
Mhm.
get engaged. We're happy. We
Yeah.
feel like we can make it get done. So there is just a vitally important key in leadership that we've kind of been touching along all along here in a way to be able to interview better, to be able
Right.
to be a better leader who builds people, teams, and relationships. And it's kind of against the grain of the way we've all been raised about leadership, because we've all been raised to believe that leadership is about answers, that you go to
Yes.
the leader for answers. I'm going to suggest that in today's world, and it's going to just amplify as we keep moving forward, that leadership today is much more about questions than answers.
Yes.
That one of the key things we want to be as leaders, and we need to kind of relearn this, is to become what I call master askers. And a master asker does a lot of things. When you ask instead of tell, and then you do what we rarely do, which is actually listen
Yeah.
before you formulate your response. Because a lot of times when we ask a question, we're looking for our answer, or
Right.
we're
We're
already.
getting ready for the response.
That's exactly right. But
Yeah.
instead of just take it in, absorb it, we'll come out with what we really intend to say, and there's probably a better thing to say than if we're formulating while they're speaking. So when we ask instead of tell, here's a bunch of things that we do in the interview process. We have an opportunity to find out what's most important to that person.
Right.
And there is I studied psychology at Stanford. I was a coach. We're all in the world of psychology. It's how we think.
Yeah.
And there's something called the Pygmalion effect. And the Pygmalion effect is so crucial to building people, so crucial to being a great mom or a great dad, so crucial if you really care about people. And the Pygmalion effect says that our thoughts and our beliefs and our expectations are magnetic. That as we look at people, we don't just see them, and depending upon the amount of influence we have, we're actually pulling them, no matter who
Attracting
they are,
them.
we're
Yeah.
pulling them in the direction of the way we see them. So if we are looking for what's wrong with them, we will pull them in that direction.
Right.
I had a high school counselor. This will make it very realistic. I had a high school counselor. His name is Mr. Anderson. He was the cool teacher. He was the one
Right.
you would have loved, Emily. He was funny, and he loved us, and he cared about us. He was joking. He was great. And when I was 15, he pulled me into his office one day. And he was really serious, and he was never serious. He always had a sparkle in his eye. He
Yeah.
set me in a chair. He stood above me with his arms crossed, and he looked at me and says, "You know, Brian, a student like you only comes along once every 10 or 15 years." Now, Emily, when he said it, it's real likely he meant it bad more than he meant it good. Because at that point in time, all I cared about was being popular. All I cared about was having people like me.
Right.
And somehow or other, and as a result, I was skating. I wasn't trying my best. I didn't want to seem smart. I didn't want to, I wanted to be cool.
Right.
And I was kind of the class clown. I'd wait for the worst possible moment to say the most inappropriate thing to try to get a laugh out of people. So, but Mr. Anderson, as a Pygmalion, a positive Pygmalion, saw in me what I was terrified to see in myself. And the next words he said are magnificent lesson for leaders. He said, "Brian, there's something special in you. Stop wasting it." He said, "Every day is a gift, but you're the only one that can open your gift, and you're not opening
Right.
any of them. Make your life a masterpiece. If your tank has fuel in at the end of the day, you wasted that day. Pour your heart in full out." And the impact of that positive Pygmalion changed the whole trajectory of my life. I never would have gotten into Stanford. Stanford led me to have to pay for it. I ended up being a coach. Coaching
Right.
led me to my wife and children, that led me to this podcast. So the important thing to understand is, if you want retention, if you want to build a community, if you want to build people, you have to ask yourself, you're already a Pygmalion. There's only one question. What kind? Do
Right.
you focus on what's wrong more than what's right? Now, it's not to pretend we don't make mistakes, and we make errors. You see them, but then where do you focus? We focus on, let's correct it, or let's beat you down because of what you did. So um, being a positive Pygmalion is something that's all within our grasp. It means ask more than tell, listen, start paying attention to really people what their strengths are, what their passions are, what they love to do, and help them move, put them in the best place possible. You are if you're a basketball fan, you're the point guard. You're putting
Right.
people to where your job isn't to score the most points necessary. Your job is to help everybody around you get better. And when you do that, when people feel important, they rise to a oh yeah spirit. And when
Right.
people feel unimportant, they fall to a oh no spirit, and they become disillusioned. And when they do
Right.
that, they're actively disengaged.
Yeah, I love that. It reminds me of the quote by a couple of things, but the quote by Albert Einstein where I think he said something along the lines of, if you asked me a question and gave me 60 minutes to answer it, I'd spend 59 minutes contemplating the question and the last 60 seconds answering it, to be like, to really think on these things. And I think the same thing with, this kind of ties back into like the idea of um, really getting to know who people are, um, more on an all size fits one basis and not a one size fits all basis.
Yes, yes.
But this means too that leadership would need to be aware enough, self-aware enough of different communication styles, right?
Mhm.
Because not everybody communicates the same way. And I think what happens sometimes is we don't even ask our leadership the question, and this can destroy culture and retention pretty quickly. Is sometimes our leadership, we promote them because that's like the next indicated step, right? It's the next step on the ladder. And the ladder succession says this person is an assistant manager, now they must become a manager. But that person, like, the reality is, might not be great with people. So, like, unless you're willing to like give them some sort of like resources, because again, I believe like people are only as good as the resources that we provide them. If you want somebody to advance into a management position but they're not good with people, but you really want them there, you first better ask them if that's even what they want. And then second, if they say yeah, but they're not great with people, but you want them there and they want to learn, then there's got to be some sort of like mentorship or some sort of involvement in their development towards upskilling them into that position.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It,
We've
it,
lost that mentorship culture. It's like, where the hell did it go?
Yeah, we have two really wonderful tools that we can use to do that, to be mentors. One is vision, and the other is asking.
Yes.
I took a course when I was at Stanford that I was a psychology major, and I had a course. It was called Observation of Children, and we had a little preschool on campus, and so the course, this was developmental psychology. The whole course was
Right.
once a week for a quarter. We were on the quarter system, so 11 weeks. We were as a student, we went to this preschool, and we had to pick out one child. So these are all kids who are 5 and under, who we observed for 4 hours once a week for 11 weeks.
Right.
I thought it would
Oh,
be so boring. I would get so tired of it
oh,
after the first 5 minutes. It was the most absolutely stimulating course I ever took. I wrote a 192-page paper about this one little girl. Now, it was easier to do it in that environment than
right.
you might think, because there's always students in there. So
Yeah, there's
we're not
always stuff
supposed
going
to
on.
we're not supposed to interact with them. We're just
Right.
to observe them. What I learned from that, Emily, is we never really ever observe anybody for more than 30 seconds unless we're
No.
watching TV or a movie or doing a podcast. Most of the time, just in the same way, when we ask a question, we just respond instead of taking it in first. Then we do the same thing with observing people. We observe them and then we think we know them.
Right.
But when we really observe and take it to a different level, we'll learn things that we never would have known. I knew that little girl. I knew what made her tick. I knew what made her happy. I knew what hurt her. I knew what words really lifted her. And I never spoke to her.
Right.
All I did was interact with her. So the first thing we can do is really turn up our vision. I ask in almost every event that I speak at, I ask a question to the audience, and every audience answers the same way. And I ask them, what color is a yield sign? And I've asked that thousands of times, and every
Right.
audience answers yellow. Well, yield signs are red and white. They're
Or red and
upside down
white. Yeah.
triangles.
Yep.
And I may get, 2% of the people say red and white, but 98% say yellow. And here's the question, why? Why don't we see what's right in front of us? And here's why. Almost everyone I know, you, me, my kids, your kids, my team, your team, almost everyone I know rarely uses their vision to see. What do we use instead? We use our memory and our
Memory.
conditioning.
Hmm.
And whenever you use your memory to see, you do not see what is, you see what was.
That's why eyewitnesses are such terrible, like
There you
they're
go.
terrible in a court of law because you can you can hallucinate just like AI can. There you
Absolutely.
have it, folks.
I've had millions of people hallucinate that yield signs are yellow. And so the point is that when we stop using our memory to see, we really observe. So
Right.
observing, and there's a part of our brain right back here. It's called the reticular activating system. Now that's really hard for a pea brain like me to remember, so I remember by its shorter name for the initials, the RAS, called the RAS. And
Right.
if you want to be a great leader, you want to build really reduce turnover, increase retention, you got to get your RAS in gear. All right, because your RAS is the net-like group of cells at the base of the brain whose
Right.
job in our neurology, it's our brain's filter system. It's the spam filter. It works just
Right.
like the spam filter in email.
Exactly. Weeds
And
out the
what it
noise.
does is it sorts through all the stimuli. And if we didn't
Right.
have it, we'd check out because there's so much stimuli always around us. We need something that pushes out the junk so we pay attention to what's important. What
Yep.
the RAS lets into our conscious mind is what's of value to you and what's a threat. And it basically blocks everything else out. So if I'm going to interview somebody who I really want to develop, I'll ask them a set of questions like this. What's the best team you've ever been a part of? What made it such a great team? How did you feel to be on that team?
Yeah.
What did you contribute to that team? What did you receive from that team? What was that team's mindset? And where did that mindset come from? And as I listen to their answers, I'm getting my RAS in gear. And
Hmm.
what'll happen is I'll be walking, in 2 days through the Orlando airport. And because I asked Emily those questions, I found out and I listened. I found out what's most important to her about a team, what really she needs to feel important on a team.
Right.
And I'll be walking through the airport and it'll feel like somebody grabs my head, turns it, and walks me into a bookstore because there's a book title that matched up to what you told me in those questions. Now, the bookstore was always there, the book was always there, I was always there. The connector was to ask instead of tell and then listen. So,
Yep.
great leaders, and this is vital for networking. If you ask instead of tell, then you're present, you're not, and you're learning what's important to that person. And then it'll show up. There are resources always available to us. We've all had harassing gear. Anybody ever buy a new car? You're driving off the car lot. You're all excited about your new car. You're driving down the road, and all of a sudden you
Right.
look around. Everybody's got your car. The car was always there, but until you assign value to it, you didn't even notice them. So
Yep.
this is what we
Exactly.
can do. That's about vision and being a master asker.
Yeah, I love that being a master asker and also being able to be a master asker of yourself. If you don't have a checks and balances system built into your organization on something, then learn to play the devil's advocate with yourself because we get into a lot of traps in our brain, right? With biases and different things that come out. I mean, we got biases we don't even know we have
Oh
sometimes.
yeah. Oh yeah.
And that can be very dangerous in hiring because we're sitting there thinking, "Oh, this person's fantastic." My one of my favorites was I had a friend that super type A personality, right? He's like real type A. So he needed to hire a team for his company. So he went out and hired a bunch of type A personalities. And he calls me and he's like, I can't stand these people. I don't know what's wrong with them. Like they're salespeople, but they're just, and I'm like, well, no, you hired yourself. I said, you hired four of you. I said, that's why you can't stand these people because they're just like you. And so now, like, you're recognizing in these people all the things you don't like about yourself. And that's what happens because he affinity bias, right? Or halo bias. He picked people that were just like him. And that's an ego driven thing.
Yeah, it's a
Right.
dangerous thing too, because
Yeah.
if you want a team to be just like you're only going to have a very narrow view.
Yes.
What you want are people who have, I really have a thing about, we often hear this thing called like-minded, and
Right.
it's a very positive thing people think. I really would prefer it shifted to like-hearted.
Yes.
Um,
Agreed. Like
because
valued.
I don't want people to be just like me. I want them to see the things that I miss. I want them to have
Yeah.
abilities and talents and passions in the areas that are important, but not I'm not very good at, or I don't have those passions.
Right.
Then what we've done is we transformed a word that most people think is negative called differences into a word that is incredibly positive called resources.
Right.
All right. When you have everybody just like you have very few resources, because people don't have those different views to bring in and create more possibilities. And you see it when you bring somebody new in who hasn't been a part of that team that's all doing the same thing. They have no experience, but they say, "Well, why wouldn't that work?" It's like the old story about the daughter who was making her first roast. Right. And she cuts off the end of the
Friends.
roast.
Yep.
Yeah. And then she kind of thinks about it and goes, "Why did you do that?" She goes to her mom, "Why did you cut off the ends of your roast?" And her mom says,
Yes.
"Well, I don't really
Grandma
know
did it.
either. Let me ask grandma."
Yeah.
Grandma said, "Well, my pan was too short, so I had to
Yeah.
cut it off." But we
Yep.
kept doing it because we don't bring in that new vision and new opportunity, which I love that you brought up. We need to be master askers of ourselves. And
Yeah.
here's a couple of key questions you can transform what kind of leader you are. First question, what are you focusing on? Are you focusing many people focus more on worrying about what will go wrong than
Yes.
creating what they want to go right?
Yes.
How many of us focus more on the things that upset us, the people that disappoint us, instead of the things that bring us passion and purpose? How many of
Right.
us are focusing more on obstacles than on solutions? So it's just a great question to ask because it can shift you. Second question is to ask yourself about your own self-talk as a leader.
Right.
And
Yes. Good
any
one.
here's a great one. Ask yourself and just pay attention for the next week how many times you say I have to do something.
I have to or I can't.
I have to or I can't, but start with have to, and here's
Yeah.
why. When we were little kids, we were often told you have to do something, and it
Right.
was it was a protection. It was our parents loved us. Well, we have to not touch the stove when it's burning, or we're going to burn our
I don't
hand.
know. Mine came on the end of a wooden spoon a lot, so I
All
don't
right, okay, there you go.
know.
But there were always two other words attached to have to.
Right.
And when we were little, the words were or else.
Right.
You have to do this or else something bad will happen.
Right.
As we get older, we may think the or else disappears. It doesn't, it just becomes unconscious. All right,
Yeah.
subconscious. And so every time we say, I have to do something, we're actually attaching or else something bad will happen. So here's a question. What do you have to do? Well, to tell you the truth, there's really only one thing. You have to die. Everything else is a matter of choice. Now,
Right.
there's consequences to choices, but that's another choice. So if you shift from I have to, all right, which automatically also creates something called the pushback. Whenever somebody
Right.
pushes us, we
Yep.
push back. And shift to I want to, I choose to, I love to, I like to, I can't
I
wait to.
get to. Yeah.
Yeah, I get to. You are moving forward. You are looking, I'm known as America's breakthrough speaker because I have people break boards karate style in
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
event.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. When you say I have to, you're living your life looking at the board. And when you look at the board, you get the board.
Well, you're also
Right.
you're not taking any ownership either.
Yeah. When you go, I want to, I choose to, then you're looking beyond the board, and that's when you break through.
Right.
So it's a really, those couple questions, because if that becomes a part of your culture, we do things because we have to. We're actually doing it out of fear. We're
Right.
doing it out of, oh no, something bad will happen. But when we do it out of want to, choose to, like to, lead to, we absolutely increase engagement, ownership, and creativity.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And I think we don't do that a lot because of fear of losing control, right?
Mm,
And this is sort of the what I've been talking a lot about lately with organizations is, the fact that, because you know this, I'm a huge history buff. Um, but this goes back to the generations, right, in the workforce and the way organizations were built in the first place, being stability foundationally built versus agility built. And so now we have organizations who are kind of stagnant, right? Like they're built in this sort of inertia of like non-movement. And we have some pretty disruptive things coming into the market right now, like AI and different technologies surrounding that. And, the economy is going a little wacko right now, not a little, but quite a bit. Um, so, I mean, we have this mindset, and then of course, the boomers and the Gen X's are kind of different mindseted than the millennials and the Gen Z's. And I think Gen X is kind of the translator. I've said that before. They're the middle child of the workforce right now because like we speak all the languages.
I like that,
But
middle child.
yeah, but if you think about like how boomers, which are the majority of business owners or developers in this country, um, they came out of a post-Cold War, World War II kind of mentality of like they're the doers, right? They've got to get the stuff done. There's stability. It was, make money, support your family, 2.5 kids, white picket fence, buy a house, the whole 9 yards. That was the American dream. And now we have two generations that grew up with us shoving tablets and cell phones into their hands when they were 4 years old because we didn't want them crying at the dinner table or in church or whatever the case may be. And we reinforce that behavior. So we have to take accountability for that, right? So these groups intergenerationally are not talking to each other in the workforce either because they don't understand each other, like these basic groups. And so I think that's a huge contributor to this like instability is that you've got these ideas, right? Again, this is the siloed thing, but not siloed in departments, siloed in generations.
Yep, yep.
Is that there you've got the doers and then you've got the thinkers, the innovators, and they're not talking to each other, and they absolutely should be.
Oh, and they have so much to give to each other.
They
There's
do,
so much we can learn from each perspective. The perspective of experience is incredibly valuable.
right?
The perspective of no experience is incredibly valuable. Because we've coming from, my grandchildren know more about technology than I do, and and if we don't learn from each other, then we become fearful of each other.
Right,
Then we become separate from each other.
right. We
You
become
know,
divisive too in some cases.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And here's something else. It comes back to what we were talking about before, how important it is to ask. Because um, when somebody asks you, Emily, what do you think about this? Immediately, it makes you feel valued. It makes you
yes,
feel like they are interested in me. That, and you get the extra bonus of learning something from somebody's different viewpoint that you may never have thought of in that way before. So the other value of being a master asker as you build people is if you ask great questions, number one, you help people think for themselves, to
right.
think as you do in your podcast. You ask questions that cause people, 71-year-old guys like me, to think about things that I hadn't thought about in the same way, even though I've been doing this forever. So that's really valuable to me, to open my mind up and open my thoughts up to new ideas. But it also, whenever you ask instead of tell, realize that you help people to clarify their own ideas, and to feel like they're important. And
Right,
here's the biggest deal of all. You want to reduce retention. I mean, you want to increase retention, reduce turnover. You want to build productivity, build engagement. Our job, no matter where we are, and remember I said we're all leaders. I believe all of our job is to help the people that we lead, that we serve, that we love, that we care about, whether it's at work or at home, to know they're important.
yes,
When people feel important, they rise in their engagement, they rise to their spirit, they rise to their creativity, they rise to their potential. And when people feel unimportant, they act out, they quit, they leave, they disrupt, they give up. So the
yep,
job one is to help people know they're important. And the most fundamental, and yet it's also a simple choice. The
right,
only way you can really make people feel important is to be fully present.
yes,
Yeah. And what that means is when you're fully present with someone, 100% of your mind, body, and spirit is with the people you're with where they are now. Now, how many of us ever been with somebody where you know their body's present, but the rest of them is in another county. Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how does it make you feel when someone you wish to be present with you is somewhere else? It for some people it makes them angry,
It's
but for most
dismissive.
people it
Yeah.
makes them feel sad or small.
Right.
But everyone I've ever known, when somebody's we want to be present with us and they're not, it makes us feel worth less. It
Right.
makes us feel insignificant and unimportant. But when we are present, what we say to that person beyond words, and remember, 93% of communication that actually communicates is not our words. It's our voice quality, our tonality, and our body
Body
language.
language.
So when we are fully present, we say to that person unmistakably, you are important. You matter. You count. My mentor was thought of as the greatest coach of all time by many people. His name was
And
John
he
Wooden.
was one of them for
Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. If you're a Ted Lasso fan, to bring it into the Gen Z group or the millennials, Ted Lasso had on his wall John Wooden's Pyramid of Success.
Yep.
Coach Wooden was the most present person I was ever with. Now he's the most successful person in his field in history. But when you were with him, whenever you left being in his company, you felt like the legend because he was so interested in you,
Hmm.
because he did the simple things we've talked about. He asked more than told, and then he listened. He kept things simple. And I think that's another really, really important thing that we can do if we
Definitely.
want to build people is to really create more simplicity. Simplicity is power.
Right.
But most of all, he was just 100% interested in you, and you felt important. And that is at the heart of how he built great teams and how all of us can build great teams. Because 5 minutes of being present with someone is worth 5 years of faking it, and you
Right.
cannot fake it. How many of you know when you're with somebody if they're really there or when they're not? We all do.
We all
So,
do.
so
Yeah.
the foundation comes down to ask instead of tell, truly listen, use your vision to see more often than just your memory, and really make the decision to be more fully present with each person whenever you can, and then just get out there with energy and be with your people as much as you can. And if you do
Absolutely.
those three things, you're going to start to build momentum and a retention and a real level of engagement where people feel I matter here. I want to make a difference here.
Right. Well, I love that. And I think that's kind of this matter of having people feel and know they're important, right? And listening to people. I would take it a step further and say people need to know they're invited in the first
Mm.
place. Because who doesn't like to be invited, right? Like it sucks to feel excluded. And people, use knowledge as currency in a lot of ways. That's important to remember. Like we use our knowledge as power. And when people feel like they don't know things and they're not invited to things and they're not invited to participate, they feel alone and isolated. And that's a big problem in today's workforce. A lot of people feel isolated, and especially with the remote work side of things. But we're getting towards the end of this interview, but I want to tie in what you said about being present for people and listening, because this is probably my favorite part of this interview. Is I anytime I get to talk about Joseph Campbell, I'm super happy. But where I go with this is really knowing about the hero's journey, right? So if you haven't read the book Hero with a Thousand Faces, um, Joseph Campbell talks about the hero's journey, and every person, doesn't matter who you are, has this hero's journey inside of them. And what this means is that we all basically are striving to be born again into greatness and purpose and meaning. That's what we seek throughout our entire lives, is to be finding meaning and purpose in life and what we do in life. And I believe strongly that this is kind of a huge, not kind of, it's a huge missing component in a lot of work, and foundationally values in an organization, because when we make people the hero of the story, we invite them in, we invite them to participate, and we welcome them to collaborate in their journey. They get instant ownership over their journey. It's like a choose your own adventure. Now, we know foundationally we can't like give everybody everything that they want because that's impossible. And I mean, life's not like that. But when you do things to practically give people tools that can help them have intention and meaning, they instantly want to improve. They want to be the hero. And then they take that and they become the hero in other parts of their lives because I believe most people inherently want to be better in life.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so there's like low lift things that organizations can do to help with these types of hero journey things. And it's things like, CEOs showing up, like popping in on like, team meetings, just popping in and like listening to stand-ups and like they don't even have to say much, just be like, I just wanted to come in and like hear what you guys were talking about. And, skills-based volunteering in organizations is another one. I mean, culture of
Absolutely.
storytelling.
I'll give you a simple one as a professional
Yeah.
speaker. I can tell how much retention is going to be in an organization by one really simple little thing.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm often introduced by the CEO or the person who's in charge of that company. If they stay in that room for that keynote instead of going off and doing something else, if they stay not sitting in the back, but right in the midst of everybody,
Yeah.
that's a company that's going to be successful
Yeah.
because they are humble and hungry to learn.
Yes.
I always like to give you, when you're talking about the hero's journey, how do you help people rise to their potential? And a lot of that is about that we can control within ourselves as leaders is about the way we deliver recognition, acknowledgement, appreciation,
Yes.
thanks, and kindness. And I'll give you a really quick, I know we don't have a lot of time, but I want to give people a really practical, fun way to remember how you
Yeah.
can become better at this. Remember, just think of the television network, the sports network, ESPN.
Yep.
All right. Now, from here on out, ESPN, whether you love sports, you don't care, you're going to love ESPN. The E says deliver recognition, acknowledgement, appreciation, and kindness with effort and energy. The E is effort and energy. You ever notice sometimes, Emily, we thank people we're not really there anymore. Hey, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. It doesn't mean
Yeah.
anything. But
Right.
when we look them in the eye, we smile at them, we grab their hands with both of our hands, we put a little energy into how we recognize them. We
Right.
help them feel invited and welcome. It sticks. So the E says thank people with effort and energy, but also thank people for their effort and energy and not just their results.
Yes.
We've been conditioned to only give praise when the job's done and the goal's been hit. Keep doing that. But if you want to be a true people builder, build retention, be even more alert for the opportunities to recognize and acknowledge and appreciate people for their effort and energy before they get to the results, because
Yes.
that's when they're focusing on controlling their controllables. So E, thank people with and for effort and energy. S in ESPN, use the power of surprise from time to time.
I
It can
love
be
that.
a handwritten card for a happy
Yep.
heck of
I
it.
love that.
It can be stop a meeting to acknowledge somebody who didn't even know they could be acknowledged just because they've been going that extra mile or been unselfish. It could be a post-it note on their door. It could be a phone call. But when you use surprise, it's the super glue of impact. And when you point and you say to somebody, Emily, you do an amazing job at the questions you ask on your podcast, it sticks. All right, because it's not the norm. So S is the power of surprise. P is what we talked about. It is most important. Be fully present. And N, do it now.
Yes.
I think the most important words I've ever written are at the core if you want to be a leader who builds people, teams, and relationships. And the most important words I've ever written say, the love we fail to share is the only pain we live with.
Yes. Yep.
And if you don't get this right now, the love you fail to share will be only pain you leave with, and that's too late. So that means if you've been using your memory to see instead of your vision, you can change it now. If you've been not real good at being present, you can make a new choice and be better at it right now. If you've been kind of ho-hum about recognizing people, you know how to use ESPN right now. Because every day we have a road in front of us and we get to the same Y in that road. One side goes as soon as, one side goes now. As soon as is easy. It's well
Yes.
lit. There's no ruts. Piece of cake, but it's a direct road to never. So
Exactly.
seize the window of opportunity, the woo, seize it now. And if you do that, you're going to find that you're going to absolutely create more and more breakthroughs in your organization and have more fun in the process.
Yeah, and figure out how to do it outside of your ego, because you have a saying about ego. I always say your ego is not your amigo. You always say,
Ego, we got to move from ego to we go.
yeah, there we go. I love it. So yeah, that's great. I think that's a phenomenal note to end on. We got to make people the hero of their journey. We got to be, present, invite people in, and be champions of community and connection, right? Humility. And Brian, I so appreciate you being here today and taking time out of your schedule to chat with me. Brian Biro, you can find him on LinkedIn, also at brianbiro.com. You've got your books on your website as well. And again, the newest one that just came out was called Lessons from the Legend. Legends. I'm gonna pick that up because I love that your mentor is like the original. He's just so cool. So did he do the forward in that one too, or was it the
No, he did Forward and Beyond Success. He
Beyond
passed
Success?
away
That's right.
at the age of 99 and a half, about 15 years ago. But
Amazing.
he was amazing. We're still talking about him. And so we got Joseph Campbell and John Wooden. That's a
Yeah.
couple of pretty great heroes in our lives that lead us on our hero journey.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thank you again so much. Good luck with your speaking engagement tomorrow. And again, thank you for being here. And I look forward to our next chat.
I love it. Joy to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
How incredible was that conversation with Brian? From yoga gnomes to John Wooden, from blame busting to breakthrough leadership, Brian brought so much wisdom and heart to this discussion. Here's what I want you to walk away with. First, Brian's insight that leadership today is more about questions than answers. Start asking instead of telling, and then this is crucial, actually listen to the responses. Second, that ESPN framework for recognition, deliver appreciation with effort and energy, use the power of surprise, be fully present, and do it now. As Brian says, the love we fail to share is the only pain we live with. And third, remember that everyone is a leader. You're the CEO of your own life, and how you show up every day impacts the people around you. When people feel important, they rise. When they feel unimportant, they fall. Brian's standing on a stack of John Wooden books. During our interview, literally standing on the shoulders of greatness, and that's what great leaders do. They lift others up. You can find Brian Biro on LinkedIn and at brianbiro.com, where you'll find his 16 books, including his latest, Lessons from the Legends. I'll put all his information in the show notes. If this conversation inspired you to think differently about leadership and retention, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And leave us a review. It helps other leaders find these important discussions. Until then, remember, move from ego to we-go, ask more than you tell, and make sure the people in your life know they matter. Thanks for listening to Talent Talks.